Okay, so in this presentation we'll be looking at some ethical and legal stuff. Just to start off, we'll be looking at some history into research, and yeah, so we're going to start with the Nazis. So the Nazis used prisoners from their concentration camps. They use these to test at what point temperature affects the body until death in most cases. Another test that they did was for how different oxygen levels affect the body again, mainly to the point of death. The evidence collected was then used for the fighter pilots in case they were to crash and land in the sea or be really high in the sky with less oxygen. Many people felt this was too far, and the Nazis' research caused for ethics and legal considerations. So, firstly, ethics. Ethics are what people feel is like morally right and wrong. For example, killing someone while testing temperature reactions with the body is morally wrong. And then legal is related to the law, and if broken can result in a prison sentence. For example, suffering a human subject to death is against the law and would result in a prison sentence. Okay, now we're going to talk about a guy called Professor Philip Zimbardo. He influenced the new ethics and legal studies by running a study on how normal innocent people would react in the environment of a prison. Many of the subjects were either removed due to them breaking down and like screaming and crying, or were mentally scarred to the point where they were described as zombies and would follow any instructions. The subjects therefore were harmed mentally and physically during this because the subjects were told to do things and stuff which hurt them, and yeah, it all got a bit nasty. The Milgram was another turning point on ethics and legal considerations in research. So Milgram tested the obedience of a test subject when asked to inflict an electrical volt through a person. So they questioned this person, and when the other subject got a question wrong, they'd be electrocuted. As they got more wrong, the voltage was then increased. However, the subject giving the electric shock was not aware that the other subject was not actually getting electrocuted. Therefore, all they knew is that they were really hurting the subject to the point where they could almost kill them. Okay, now we're going to talk a bit about the definitions. So the Cambridge Dictionary describes ethics as beliefs about what is morally right and wrong. For example, obviously it's morally wrong to put a test subject in a situation they are not happy with and forcing them to do it. Legal is described as connected with the law and allowed by the law by the Cambridge Dictionary. For example, it is not legal to perform a test which you are aware will kill a subject. Okay, so BASES. BASES is an organization which credits and allows researchers to take tests and research different aspects of sports science. Being credited by BASES will open up opportunity for a researcher, as it shows they can be trusted taking tests and know what they're doing. So BASES also do have a code of conduct which must be followed by the researchers. If it is not followed by the researcher, then they could lose their accreditation, and this could stop them doing jobs in the future. So code of conduct consists of the subjects having to behave in a professional conduct, so presenting themselves well, showing them that they are a professional team, really trying to find out the answers to their questions. They also have to have a major concern for the researchers, so the researchers have to have a major concern for the subjects, so they have to really focus on the subjects and make sure they're alright. They must not practice or work when it's not fit to do so, so they have to be 100% sure on what they're doing. They have to know exactly what they're doing, and they can't just sort of guesswork. They must keep a professional relationship with their clients, so obviously keeping it very professional and not doing anything silly. It must not jeopardize safety of subjects, so safety must always be key when running tests. Not be biased towards any subject, so you have to keep it fair. Don't cheat on any of the results to make them look like you're doing a better test than you actually are. Highest standard of safety is also very important. Keep everyone safe and not getting any injuries. And respond to inquiries from bases or subjects. So if you don't, then you may lose your accreditation. Suitable insurance is also necessary in case there's any injuries. And you must not do anything a bases disrepute. Okay, so now we're going to look at ethical and legal considerations in research. So these are things that must be considered when running a test to make sure it's not against the law and is legal. Also, you have to make sure that the test is ethically correct, meaning it is morally right to do this test. The ethical and legal considerations are bases, institutional ethics and review committee, ethical clearance, risk-benefit assessment, volunteers, informed consent, right to withdraw, health and medical screening questionnaire, participant disclaimer, equality and impartiality, research responsibility, deception, health and safety, confidentiality and anonymity, data protection, scientific misconduct. So on the next 4 slides, I'll be giving examples on where these might be used and why these are used and the benefits that is going to come from them. Okay, so scenario 1, investigation into the effects of an aggressive halftime team talk compared to a positive team talk on performance in basketball. The first one we're going to look at is mental harm. So mental harm is where someone emotionally could be made to feel bad about themselves, could be made to feel not confident, all these sorts of things where they may not want to play in the sport anymore. So this test could cause mental harm. If it's a really aggressive team talk, then their confidence levels could drop and they might not want to play anymore. So this is definitely something that they need to be wary about because they don't want to upset anyone like this. So the second one is consent. So the subjects will all need to give consent to take part in this test and completely understand what is taking part in the test. This links to the deception aspect, which is our 4th point. So deception is where you do not explain exactly what is happening in the test, or you say one thing that is going to happen and it doesn't to get them to take part. The subjects must be well aware of that the coaches are going to react aggressively, so they're not surprised by this. And they need to give consent to be prepared to take this test. Okay, back to the 3rd one. So the right to withdraw is when a subject feels they do not want to carry on taking part in the test. The subjects must be well aware that they are allowed to withdraw, and if they choose to withdraw, it will not cause any problems to the test. Okay, number 5, risk-benefit assessment. This is where it's decided if the results of the test will be worth the subject's pain that they've put through, or not necessarily pain, but what they have to go through to get the test results. For example, if a test will cause harm to a subject and the results won't be that useful, then the test may not go ahead as it's not worth it. In this scenario, it must be decided if putting the athletes through the aggressive test is worth the results. Ethical training may be required if the test is to go wrong and someone is to get really injured or really mentally harmed, or they don't let them drop out when they want to. So this will also help the researchers realize what is ethically right and wrong in the future if they have to go through this training. So that is a good thing. If they do mess up, then in the future they won't be making a mistake again. Obviously it's not a good thing though if someone gets very hurt. Scenario 2, an investigation into whether Lucozade helps young athletes in football. So confidentiality and anonymity is to protect the test subjects. This means that the names and personal information of the subjects are not released and exposed to the public. Anonymity is where the subjects keep anonymous and their names are not revealed. This could mean they are referred to as a number or a random name put in place. This is needed in this scenario due to the fact they're working with young athletes who will definitely be children. Data protection is similar to confidentiality, however the difference is the data is protected by using random names, subject numbers, or protecting the data similar to anonymity. So people could then not use it against the subject in future. If the test didn't go well, it could affect the reputation of the child in future if they didn't perform very well. This is key in the scenario due to the fact it's children who may not want to be exposed for many reasons, for example, parents wanting to keep it anonymous and for future reference. Participant disclaimer is to take any blame for injuries and faults from the researcher. This is useful in research as the test is with children, and if any children were to get hurt because of the research, it could ruin a researcher's reputation. Also, it shows that the researcher is not trying to hurt the children. He's not trying to do a test specifically to harm someone. He's actually looking at the Lucozade and trying to get results for that. Equality and impartiality is to make sure you are fair with the choice of subjects and do not just choose one gender, for example. This is key for this experiment as there are many young football teams which are mixed gender and race. Loss of accreditation from BASES, so accreditation may be lost from BASES if there was something that went wrong in the test. This may well prevent the researcher from working on other jobs in the future because they will be known to have made a mistake. And lastly, law. So if there was a serious incident such as a bad injury or misconduct by the researcher, then there will be no precaution taken. Like if they didn't take a precaution and they let this injury happen, the researchers could end up in jail breaking the law. Scenario 3. So an investigation into altitude training on 15-year-old male and female triathlon athletes who have volunteered to take part and had a health and medical screening questionnaire. Also, the test is being run by researchers who have a very good reputation running tests similar to these. This is a good aspect. So, volunteers, this is a great aspect of the investigation as the researchers have not forced their subjects into taking part. They've got athletes who have volunteered to take part. So this makes it a lot, well, basically the researchers cannot force anyone into taking part. They do have to be for volunteers, but some may force them, but these researchers haven't, which is good. The investigators have also had their subjects take health and medical screening questionnaires, which will mean they know whether or not the athletes are fit enough to take part in the test. This will improve the safety of the investigation. So physical harm could be a factor. This is where a subject is basically harmed physically, so they might break a leg, they might collapse or something like this. This test could definitely cause physical harm as the athletes are working at a high altitude. This can be a lot tougher on the body and cause injuries in certain situations. Scientific misconduct, reputation and expertise. As it says in the scenario, the researchers have a good reputation, meaning they should know what they are doing and will conduct the test professionally. However, they may lose their reputation and expertise if they were to mess up badly. Researchers may be fined if they didn't check properly if everything was right and somebody was injured because of this. This fine could cause them to lose jobs in future as the volunteers will see that they have made mistakes in the past. Researchers are also responsible to check for any mistakes that may happen before or if there is anything about the test that they need to be aware of. So this is research responsibility. They must also research what they believe the results will be to make sure that they believe it's safe. Okay, moving on to scenario 4. Effects on whether taking pre-workout before a skydive helps to have the confidence to jump, and the test will use volunteers who admit to being nervous when doing extreme sports. So, health and safety is a main one for this one. So you need to make sure this test is being run safe to take part in. Due to the fact the test is on young athletes taking pre-workout who are not very confident, extra precautions need to be taken place as like if they're nervous they might be really on edge and do something silly. Institutional ethics and review committee, so they need the clearance to run the test on whether it is morally right or wrong to do so. In this scenario, they are using volunteers who admit to being nervous, but they are volunteers, so they know what they're experiencing, so it's not deceiving or anything like that. Ethical clearance, so as we just said, some people may feel it's morally right It's morally wrong to go ahead with this test, but as we mentioned, it is volunteer, so they